And then I know that you have been working with Jay Orban and DBS Pro on a game with a company called Charisma Entertainment.
Yeah.
Can you describe Charisma Entertainment, what they do, and what their kind of raison d'etre is?
Yeah, it's very interesting. Charisma, they have developed a platform for storytelling, which is AI powered, and is really like it's basically like a platform where you can create stories and branching, and you can have AI characters that are quite autonomous. You can choose the degree of autonomy that the AI has, how much you want to program your story or how much you want the AI to improvise, but they can also generate the replies and the dialogue independently, potentially. So we've made, where we worked on the sound of a game that they made, the Kraken Wakes, which was to, I guess, mainly showcase the power of charisma and how you can create a whole game that is, the gameplay is driven by these AI characters. So you pretty much, you play the game by talking to them. You actually talk to them through the microphone or you type, and then they reply to you and they remember what you said to them and you affect the story.
Can you just describe the world of the Kraken Wakes? What's the game about?
It's actually based on a book by John Wyndham. It's a sci-fi from post-war, I believe,
Yeah.
around 50s. It's it's similar to War of the Worlds in my mind as a sci-fi vibe. It's like it's an invasion of our planet, and you're a journalist pretty much who is documenting everything that is happening, and that's what you do with all of the other characters are mainly they're all controlled by AI and they have different opinions of what's happening, and you kind of choose how to report things. And we've actually developed quite interesting audio stuff to try and underpin what is going on in the Kraken Wakes. Mainly, one thing was because the AI generates voices automatically from text to speech, they're still quite not, at least a few years ago, they were not really good with emotion and transmitting the tone of what they were telling you. So Charisma put a lot of focus on us in trying to convey that with music. So we had to develop a whole music system that would adapt in real time to the emotions that this character was trying to represent. So to sort of underpin the tone of the conversation that you're having. And
So how did that work? Did you have to make several scores, and how did you elide the different parts of the scores together?
So what we did, the game was developed in Unreal 4, and we've used Fmod for the music engine. And what we had to do was, for the composers, one of which is actually John, it's John and Jay, it was actually, I think, quite, in a way, challenging for the composers, because the way the music had to be composed was not only non-linear, but also accommodate for quite a range of possible emotions that the character could try and express. And it all had to be divided in stems that were assigned emotional values, and they have to kind of work together, and then we needed transitions from one to the other. It was a bit of a headache, actually.
And how did you think about, or the team think about, translating the emotion in a conversation into the emotion in the music? How was that done?
Well, what we did was, funnily enough, we came up with the idea of using the circumplex model of affect, which is used in psychology research for assessing the emotional state of participants, really. And it's funny that we basically said to Charisma, okay, if you can give us this the circle place model of effect is based on two values, which is sort of the positivity of the emotion and the intensity of the emotion. So it's like an XY grid. We said to Charisma, oh, if we can get these two values and this is what they need to represent, it would be great. And they said, actually, behind the scene in our AI systems, these values are already there. They're already part of the AI in Charisma has something like 72 variables for complex emotions, but they get automatically condensed into these two numbers because they are a nice way to represent human emotion in a simple way. So then we just had to take them and use them to drive the music changes in F mode. And we had to use a whole, if you're familiar with music for games, we use both horizontal and vertical adaptive music techniques. We kind of had to use everything we could F mode to its limit, and it was still a little bit short of what we wanted to do. In fact, we then had a second game with Charisma, which is more like a demo that never ended up being published, but we tried again doing the same music system, but in W-Wise the second time. And it was a little bit closer to what we wanted. It's still not exactly.
And how was the world of the game produced between the audio and the visuals and the programmers? How was that carried out?
In the Kraken Wakes?
Yeah.
Well, so the obviously the graphics, the space, it was all made by the developers and the graphic designers, and then we would have to put the sound in it. In fact, what was interesting for me in the Kraken Wakes was that it was about 2 years ago, I think, and basically Steam Audio started being a solid software to use. Now, in gaming, for quite some time, there's been work towards acoustic simulations, especially thanks to, we got more computing power, and everybody's like, yes, we can calculate the reverbs in real time now. And there's kind of a bit like a few software, there's a few companies, obviously there's Resonance Audio from Google, there's software from Oculus, and there is this Steam Audio package from Steam that they all, they do various things to deal with acoustics. They calculate the occlusion, so how a sound is muffled, I guess, behind a wall, but really, that sort of, I think the holy grail of it is calculating reverb in real time based on geometry, and we did that with Steam Audio in the Kraken Wakes.
And that includes the properties of the virtual materials too.
Yes. So what you do is you have the geometry of space because you have the 3D model in the game. So they take those information, they take the position of the source and the position of the listener, and then what you need to add is the acoustic properties of the materials of the room. So if it was this room, you would have a model of this room, and you would probably need to assign different values to the area where the panels are and the area where you have more the wall, and then when you have the carpet, and you have to sort of figure out the acoustic absorption properties of the materials and then assign them to your surfaces. And funny enough, I think that was the one thing that was not working well in Steam Audio. Steam Audio was great. It was 1.0, so it had a few glitches. But it was working, so it was very exciting. But the one thing was that their default settings for like concrete, plaster, carpet, they just didn't sound like a room of concrete or a room of plaster. They were just a bit off. Mm-hmm. So what we did is actually we went back to acoustics, and in acoustics, if you have to install some panels like this in a room to do acoustic treatments, what you do is you use this Sabine formula. And it's a similar thing. You take the measures of each wall and every surface. You have these alphas. They are like absorption coefficients of materials. So you calculate the reverb of your room, and then you add a panel that has a much higher absorption coefficient, and you say, okay, if I put 6 of these, then the room is gonna sound like that. And basically what we did was we researched the coefficients of brick, carpet, glass, all of the objects that we had in the Kraken Wakes. And then we tried to convert them in how steam audio considers it. And then it started sounding good, basically.
And you were doing that with the developer in Charisma at the time, Oscar.
Yeah, that was actually a game changer because how Steam Audio was, the UI was still a bit quite rough because obviously it was quite a new software. So you had, for every wall in every level of your game, you had to input all of the 8 numbers for your acoustic properties manually, which was long. So, but luckily, as I was saying earlier, this is one of my favorite things about working in games is that you're working with programmers who are like wizards, basically. So if you have a good reason to get them to spend some time on a task for you, then they can do amazing things. Basically, Oscar literally modified the SDK of Steam Audio to create a functionality of preset creation. So I could create the preset for bricks and carpet based on Sabine's coefficients. And then I was able to just reuse from a drop-down menu in and tag all of the game's properties. And if I will change it, it will change across the whole game. That was just a thing that Steam Audio didn't do, but it saved me like probably a week of boring work.
And how do you think that process affects the presence of someone playing that game, listening to the room? What difference does it make?
I personally think it's quite key, actually. I think we are, I think by nature we're so good at detecting sound, even if we do it unconsciously and not realizing we're just, if you close your eyes and they when it's a surprise party or something and they make you walk through various spaces, you're kind of constantly aware of when you're in a corridor, when you're in a small room, whether you're going through a door right now, and we just do that automatically with our ears. We're so good at detecting acoustic spaces, more than I think errors in the graphics. I think we tend to ignore them more easily to get on with it, while when the sound is off, especially sort of like you have a big reverb hole, but it's looking at a small space, you just like, something is off, and maybe I don't even know why. So I think actually it's great that this is starting to become soon, I think we're almost there, it's gonna become quite good and in a way automatic. You don't need someone to just listen to it and say like, yeah, that sounds like about the same reverb for this room that I'm looking at. It's gonna be more like, no, these are the dimensions, these are the materials.